The first thing everyone noticed was the silence. It fell heavy and sudden over the restaurant, like a glass shattering without a sound. Forks paused midair. A child stopped swinging his legs under the table. Even the espresso machine seemed to sigh and hold its breath. At the center of it all stood a man in a plain black apron, his hands folded politely in front of him, eyes steady, while a woman in an ivory coat smiled the sharp, satisfied smile of someone who believed she had just won. "Did you understand any of that?" she asked sweetly, switching back to English. The waiter nodded once. And then he answered her, in her own language, so perfectly that her smile froze where it was. Daniel Reyes had learned many ways to be invisible. He learned it after his wife died in a highway accident 3 winters earlier, leaving behind silence, hospital bills, and a 6-year-old boy who still waited by the door every evening, convinced his mother would eventually come home. Daniel learned invisibility when friends stopped calling because grief made them uncomfortable, when job applications went unanswered, when landlords glanced at his worn shoes and tired eyes and decided he wasn't worth the risk. Working as a waiter wasn't what Daniel had dreamed of. Once, he had imagined classrooms, chalk dust on his fingers, students arguing passionately about history and language. He had imagined stability. Instead, he worked double shifts at a high-end fusion restaurant in the city, the kind with dim lighting, expensive plates, and customers who believed money excused cruelty. Still, Daniel showed up every day. He memorized orders. He smiled when spoken to. He endured, because at home, taped to the fridge with a crooked dinosaur magnet, was a crayon drawing of him holding hands with his son, Mateo, under a lopsided sun. And beneath it, in careful block letters, "My hero." That was enough to keep going. The woman arrived just after 8, during the dinner rush. She didn't come alone. 2 friends followed, trailing designer bags and perfume strong enough to announce their presence before they spoke. Daniel noticed the way she scanned the room, not to admire it, but to measure it. To decide if it was worthy of her. She sat, crossed her legs, and didn't look at him when he greeted them. "I'll take sparkling water," she said, her voice clipped. Then, glancing sideways at her friends, she switched languages, French, fluid and deliberate. "And make sure it's not cheap. Places like this love to pretend." Her friends laughed. Daniel kept his expression neutral. He had heard worse. People often assumed that because he wore an apron and spoke English with a soft accent, he wouldn't understand anything else. They assumed wrong. He had grown up bilingual. His mother, an immigrant, believed language was armor. She taught him Spanish first, then insisted he learn French and Italian, working extra cleaning jobs so he could attend evening classes. "Words open doors," she used to say. "Even when people try to close them in your face." The woman continued, ordering the most expensive items on the menu, but not in English. She spoke as if Daniel weren't there, commenting on his posture, his clothes, the way his hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. "These waiters always look so desperate," she said, smiling as she spoke. "Like they're one mistake away from begging." Her friend snickered again. Daniel wrote everything down carefully. He did not flinch. But inside, something tightened. He thought of Mateo's school shoes, the soles wearing thin. He thought of the rent notice folded in his pocket. He thought of how small and tired he felt some days, and how hard he worked to hide it. When he returned with their drinks, the woman raised an eyebrow. "Finally," she said in English. Then, again in French, slower now, deliberate. "I hope he didn't spit in it. You never know with people like this." That was when Daniel looked up and met her eyes fully. "Yes, madam," he said gently, in flawless French. "I understand. And no, I did not. But I did ensure the water is exactly as you requested, imported, premium, and chilled to the correct temperature. Please let me know if it meets your expectations." The table went quiet. Her friend stared. The woman's face flushed a deep, furious red. You speak French?" she stammered. Daniel smiled, small but sincere. "I do. Among other languages." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she waved her hand dismissively. "Well, good for you," she said. "Just do your job." Daniel nodded and walked away, heart pounding. He didn't feel victorious. Just tired. But the story didn't end there. Halfway through the meal, one of the woman's friends spilled her wine. Daniel rushed over with napkins, apologizing even though it wasn't his fault. As he cleaned, the woman leaned back in her chair and said, again in French, "Careful. This floor probably costs more than you make in a month." This time, Daniel didn't respond immediately. He finished cleaning, straightened, and spoke calmly, clearly, in the same language. "Actually," he said, "it costs less than my son's education will. And that is what I work for." Her mouth opened, then closed. "My wife passed away 3 years ago," Daniel continued softly. "I am raising my child alone. I work hard. Not because I am desperate, but because I am responsible. There is a difference." The table was silent again. A few nearby diners had begun to listen openly now. One of the friends shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should," the woman cut her off, standing abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I don't need to be lectured by a waiter." She reached for her bag, ready to leave without paying. Before she could, the restaurant manager appeared. He had seen everything. "Ma'am," he said politely, "your bill." She scoffed. "After the disrespect I've received?" The manager glanced at Daniel, then back at her. "Our staff showed nothing but professionalism. If you feel uncomfortable, you are free to leave, after settling your bill." Fuming, she slapped her card onto the table. As they left, her friends avoided Daniel's eyes. The woman did not look back. Later that night, as Daniel wiped down tables, a couple approached him quietly. They had been sitting nearby. "We just wanted to say," the woman said, "my father raised me alone too. I saw myself in your words." Her husband placed a generous tip in Daniel's hand. "You handled that with more grace than most people ever could." Daniel thanked them, blinking back emotion. When he got home, Mateo was asleep on the couch, a book open on his chest. Daniel lifted him gently, carried him to bed, and tucked him in. "Papa?" Mateo murmured. "I'm here," Daniel whispered. "You didn't disappear," the boy said, half asleep. "No," Daniel replied, kissing his forehead. "I won't." That night, Daniel sat at the kitchen table long after the apartment went quiet. He thought about language, about dignity, about how people used words to build walls, or bridges. The woman had tried to shame him by making him feel small, foreign, unseen. Instead, she had reminded him of who he was, a father, a man of knowledge, someone whose worth was not defined by where he stood, but by why. And somewhere out there, perhaps, she would remember the moment her assumptions failed her. The moment a man she tried to belittle answered her with calm truth, and dignity she could not buy, because respect, like language, reveals who we are. And sometimes, the most powerful reply is simply refusing to be less than human.